Hey there, I'm Louisiana estate planning attorney Paul Rabelais, and in this video I'm going to talk about the 3 different administrative ways you can leave an inheritance to someone in a trust. Okay, so in a perfect world where everyone is financially responsible and mature, you could leave the inheritance of your heirs to them outright. And in a perfect world, they'll be 100% responsible with the inheritance. You know, they receive $400,000. They don't spend any of it. They invest it. They manage it. They benefit from it for the rest of their lives. But in reality, we all know that we don't live in a perfect world. And for some heirs, it is appropriate or even in their best interest to leave their inheritance in a trust. Reasons people leave an inheritance to someone in a trust include the beneficiary is young, or for example, a minor. The beneficiary is not financially stable enough to handle a lump sum of money the right way. In other words, they'll blow it. And when you leave an inheritance in a trust for someone, you will name a trustee of that trust. Might be a friend, might be a family member, might be a professional, might be a corporate trustee. And that trustee will manage the trust assets and make distributions to the trust beneficiary pursuant to the trust terms. Often the trust terms state that the trustee may make distributions to the beneficiary during the term of the trust for the beneficiary's health, education, maintenance, and support, HEMS, we call it the HEMS standard. Also, the trust terms also describe when the beneficiary can own the trust assets themselves. Or those trust assets are also called the trust principal. So the trust determines, or the trust instrument dictates when those beneficiaries can own the principal in their own name. And perhaps that's once they reach a certain age, maybe age 25, maybe age 35, maybe age 60, or perhaps in certain stages. You know, leaving things to a young person might say they can get a third of it when they're 25, another third or 1/2 of what's left at 30, and then the rest at age 35. Or perhaps the terms of the trust provide that the trustee can use their own discretion to determine when the beneficiary can have access to the trust principal. Now, logistically, there are 3 ways to set up a trust for an heir or for a trust beneficiary. Let's say, for example, you want to leave $250,000 to your grandchild, but you want to leave it in a trust for them. So there's 3 ways to do it. The first way to do it is through what's called a testamentary trust. In your last will and testament, that's why it's called a testamentary trust. In your last will and testament, it will say something like, I leave $250,000 to my grandson in trust. I name so-and-so, maybe their parent, as the trustee. The trustee can make distributions to my grandchild for their health, education, maintenance, and support. And then what's left, they can get it at 25, 30, and 35 in 3 stages. So that's that's one option, is to do it in a testamentary trust. Some people get confused about that because when you create a testamentary trust like that, some people, when you die, are going to think that a new trust instrument needs to be prepared. But that's not what happens. All of the terms of that trust are inside your last will and testament. So if there's any question about what those trust terms are, we always go back to your will to look at the terms of that testamentary trust that's part of your will. Okay, so the second way logistically to do this is through what I'll call a living trust subtrust. Some people, instead of using a will to dispose of their estate when they die, which does require a probate or succession proceeding that many people find expensive, time-consuming, and just an all-around hassle, some people use a revocable living trust to dispose of what they have when they pass away. The thought process is they put all those things that they want to happen when they die in the trust terms. They transfer assets that are presently in their name to their trust. Things in a trust when you die don't have to go through that court and attorney involved succession process. So many people create their trust, they what's called fund their trust, and then all the terms, so if the grandparent does that, the terms of how and when that grandchild gets the $250,000 are not described in the grandparent's last will and testament. It's described in the revocable living trust that the grandparent created. That's why we call it a revocable living trust subtrust. So even after the grandparent dies, that the trust continues on for the grandchild based on the terms of that living trust subtrust. The third way to do it is what I call creating a standalone trust for the grandchild. So a separate trust instrument gets created right now, and it's what I call a standalone trust. It's not part of your will. It's not part of your living trust. It's, if your grandson's name is Peter Smith, it's a trust is going to be created called the Peter Smith Trust. And again, all those terms, so-and-so's the trustee, trust can be used for this, beneficiary gets it at these ages, all that's in that standalone trust for Peter Smith, or the Peter Smith Trust. And then in the grandparents' either will or living trust, they just say, I leave $250,000 to the Peter Smith Trust. So, and then when the grandparent dies, funds get transferred to that standalone Peter Smith Trust. And then anytime somebody wants to review the terms of that trust, they're not going back to the will of the person who created the trust or the living trust of the person who created the trust. They're simply just going to that standalone trust, and a little cleaner that way, particularly if a trust is going to last for many, many decades after somebody dies. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to have a standalone trust for the grandchild. All three are legally valid if done correctly. There is no one better way to do it than the other. So just want to, people get confused about where's the trust, what are the trust terms when assets are left to a beneficiary in trust. Know that it's going to be one of three things. Either look for those terms in the testamentary trust, in the living trust subtrust, or in the standalone trust, bequests of which were made to it. All right, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Y'all take care.